Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. This podcast is hosted by Asher Agency, a full-service partner to clients nationwide. Asher's services include media planning, creative, digital and social, website development, public relations, printing and fulfillment, and more. Anything you need to connect with your prospects and tell your story. To learn more, visit asheragency.com or contact us at hello@asheragency.com. My guest is Amanda Calloway. Amanda, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me today, Anthony.
Well, thank you for joining me, and thanks for joining me at a busy time. You just got back from a major conference. Tell me a little bit about what that experience was like.
Yes, we were in Columbus, Ohio at AIHA Connect. So networking with a lot of industrial hygiene individuals, backgrounds in EH&S, and a lot of university professionals.
Well, have you ever been to a trade show of that scale before?
Not of that size. That was a national conference, so there were people from all over the world.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk more about that when we get into what you've been working on. But I want to go back a little further in time to the start of your career. I was really intrigued when I was looking at your LinkedIn profile because you started out on what seemed to be a pretty clear healthcare path. And by the way, I think you're the first person I met who has been to both of the I and the P initials in IPFW, meaning you were a graduate of both Indiana University and Purdue University. Tell me a little bit about how you started down that path. When you started thinking about careers, where were you headed? Why were you headed in that direction? And why did you later pivot?
Yes. So I would say it is a unique career pathway that I took because I started out as an x-ray tech. I was working outpatient at Parkview doing x-rays and phlebotomy. Yeah. I wanted to get into something creative and hands-on. Okay. So that's where I started.
So where did the initial interest in being an x-ray tech come from?
I mean, initially, I didn't want to be behind a computer.
And here you are, behind a computer every day. Yeah.
I mean, I get out and talk to a lot of clients and have meetings, so I enjoy that.
and am I correct that even before your stint in healthcare that you worked for Chick-fil-A? Do I have that right? Mm-hmm. And was that just a job to get through school, or was that at one point a career ambition?
That was my first job during high school, so not necessarily a career, but it was a great opportunity. I had a few different titles there and made a lot of great connections, met a lot of awesome individuals. Yeah, and a pretty well-known name in customer service, so you probably learned some things from that system. And you could probably run a pretty mean drive-through at this point, if my experience there is anything to speak of. So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing today, because the pivot you made is out of healthcare, but into an industry that still has an impact on health, if you will. So for someone who may have never heard the name 7Gen, how do you describe the company you work for? Sure. So at 7Gen, we do environmental, health, and safety consulting. Mm-hmm. So with the health, we do industrial hygiene surveys. And we are advocates for employees and the environment. So our goal is to help partner with employers that we work with and make their workplaces safer and healthier for their employees, and also protect the environment and the local communities that they serve.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about your role in that work. How do you help 7Gen do what it does?
Yeah, so on the business development team, I help with the first couple steps of what we call our proven process. Mm-hmm. So I start with our discovery calls. I connect with our clients, learn about their needs and their EH&S initiatives, and from there develop a solution that helps support them and help with any compliance gaps they might have. Okay,
so the business development side, is that something you had prior experience? Because I know you were working as an x-ray tech, then you had a stop at Parkview, and there were some business development components to that work, correct? Can you bridge a little bit from what were you doing at Parkview and how much of that was relevant to 7Gen? And then what was completely new? What did you have to learn from the ground up, or maybe you're still learning it in some respects?
Yeah, sure. So when I was working at Parkview, I was going to school at Purdue Fort Wayne, like you mentioned, working on my master's in organizational leadership. And eventually I saw a position open up that instead of nights and weekends was day shift. Mm-hmm. So I started out joining the Parkview occupational health team and I helped our manufacturing clients, their employees, when they needed a drug screen or had an injury. So I got really familiar with the services that we provided there.
Okay. What was intriguing to you about the 7Gen opportunity? Parkview is a well-known employer. Sounds like you had a good experience there. But what about the 7Gen opportunity made you say, maybe I should give this a second look?
Yeah. So when I graduated from Purdue Fort Wayne with my master's, I started working for Parkview Employer Solutions on their business development team.
Okay.
And that is actually how I got in contact with TJ.
Okay.
We shared a mutual client, and he supported their industrial hygiene, their air and noise survey. Mm-hmm. And I jumped back in to help them with their audiogram and respirator fit testing programs.
Okay.
So that kind of led to me reaching out to TJ, just saying, hey, if there's ever a fit for me at 7Gen, keep me in mind. And then I'll say the rest is history.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, and there will be times during this conversation when I nod as if I know what you're talking about, but there are terms you're using that are somewhat foreign to me, and I suspect they're foreign to some of our listeners as well. So tell me, what does industrial hygiene mean to you? How do you describe that work?
So I describe that as when an employer is working with different chemicals. Mm-hmm. A lot of them go into the air, and the employees are exposed to them, breathe them in. It can, they can get exposures through their skin and other ways as well. But our goal is to do monitoring to understand their exposures and help reduce those exposures. So we do air and noise monitoring to get the quantitative results, and then support them with reducing future exposures.
Okay. And how you've got some really highly skilled, really technical folks on your team. How much of that have you had to learn, and how difficult has that been?
I mean, it has been a process.
Yeah.
We have a lot of technical experts on our team, like you mentioned. So I am always learning. Still, after over a year, there's always something new. But I have a lot of team members that I just connect with and ask questions.
Yeah.
Lots of support.
Well, it does sound like a pretty collaborative place where people don't hold that information close to their vest. It sounds like they're pretty generous in sharing what they know. So hopefully that's been helpful. How long have you been there now? Is it a year?
It's a little over a year. It was May.
Okay.
So,
all right. Yes. Well, great. So in terms of things like the AIHA conference, tell me why that was such an important event for 7Gen. Why was it something that you were planning long ahead and still sort of digesting what happened there? Why is that such an important event for the company?
Sure. So it was our first time exhibiting at AIHA Connect, and our first time with the booth display that we had. So we worked with Skyline to develop our display and had it all printed and developed for the event, and wanted to participate in a national conference, connect with a lot of people, and get the 7Gen name out there. Yeah. So it's a big intro to 7Gen for us.
So you have a lot of face time with attendees. I would imagine that is simultaneously exciting and fun, but also a little exhausting, kind of having to be on for multiple days in a row. What was that experience like for you?
Yes. I mean, it was 4 days in a row, well over 12 hours each day, just awake and talking to anyone and everyone all day. So I was exhausted. I told TJ, I was like, I feel like I just got back from like a week in Florida or something.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of work, and sometimes the hardest part is making it look like it's not a lot of work when you're doing it. So what's on the horizon? What are some of the things, whether it's other conferences or other things that are important to you that are taking up, a big chunk of your time, that are at the top of your to-do list, whether they're, some of the things that are more day-to-day or new initiatives you're working on? What are some of the things that are important to you in your work right now?
Yeah, so some of the stuff I'm currently working on, lots of follow-ups from the conference, so connecting with people on LinkedIn and scheduling meetings with people from across the U.S. at some awesome corporations, and then also working on local relationships as well. That's really important to me, and in my role at 7Gen, visiting companies in the Fort Wayne and surrounding area.
Yep, because the company has a presence in Cincinnati, Texas, and Fort Wayne. Do I have that right? or am I making that up?
Nope, that's correct.
Okay. So are you responsible for all the markets, or do you focus mainly on Northeast Indiana?
I focus on Indiana and the surrounding states for the most part.
Yeah.
But TJ and I both support clients across the U.S.
Okay.
And we have a new individual, Al, who's joined us at our Cincinnati, Ohio office.
Okay.
So
all right.
he gets to take over the Ohio and some of those surrounding areas.
Well, that's great. So a little bit more support for you and TJ. That's good. So a couple things you mentioned I want to dig into a little bit. You mentioned LinkedIn. I think you know, and others who listen to this podcast know I'm a LinkedIn nerd. I think LinkedIn is the best. How does that impact the work you do? How are you using LinkedIn? Where is it helping you? And maybe what are some of the limitations you've run into with it?
Sure. So we did do your LinkedIn training, which was a great experience. You came out to 7Gen, put on the presentation, and I still, to this day, use recommendations that you made.
Well, good.
Yes.
And by the way, listeners, we didn't plan that, so thanks, Amanda.
Yeah. No, it was not planned. But it was a great resource, and I try to post at least weekly. I know you said more than weekly. Don't always hit the week mark. But I want my followers to know that I'm a real person. I think that's a great resource.
Oh, for sure.
Using LinkedIn.
For sure. Well, it's something that I think is great for staying in front of prospects and even prospective employees without the labor intensity of having to do that in some other ways. I'm always surprised when someone I haven't heard from for 2 years will reach out on LinkedIn, but it's because I've been posting and maybe engaging with their content. And even though we didn't talk, it's a conversation of sorts.
Yeah.
And out of an event like Connect, it's a great way to stay in front of people without, I hate to use this term, but without nagging them too much. It's kind of like they can see what you're doing, keep 7Gen top of mind, and then out of nowhere, you're going to hear from some of these folks who maybe you didn't even realize were prospects at the time.
Yes, it is a great resource for that. I see a lot of our companies that we work with and the clients liking and commenting on posts to just keep us, like you said, top of mind.
Yeah, for sure. Well, another thing I know 7Gen has done a great job with over the years is being involved in the community and giving back in a number of different ways. How important do you think that is from a business development standpoint? There's organizations I know that are really invested in charitable work, in volunteer work, and there's others who say, we'd love to do that, but we don't have the time. Assuming you think that's a worthwhile endeavor and that 7Gen is on the right side of that, why do you think that's important, and how does that intersect with the work you do?
Yeah, so it goes along with our values. We're advocates for the people and our environment. One thing we're working on now is partnering with Buckner Park to help keep the park clean. So that's something for our summer project for our team members, go out, clean up the community.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I was impressed with when Asher started working with 7Gen is how much you walk the walk. It's not just we want to help our clients be more environmentally conscious. We're going to be out there literally in the field, by their side. And we're also going to be doing it in our spare time, helping improve the environment in a number of different ways. I think that's pretty admirable. I'm biased, of course, but I think it's great when companies actually live their values. And I see 7Gen doing that.
That's great. Yeah, we're working on composting. That's a recent initiative we've done in the office.
Oh, wow.
And recycling along with that, and then gardening. I think that is actually my next LinkedIn post.
Oh, that's cool.
Part of our gardening.
So tell me a little bit about that, the composting and the gardening. Is it at the office or is this?
Yeah, so composting at our office is with food waste.
Yeah.
So we have buckets for paper and food waste. And then with our gardening, we cleaned up our office area because we have a nice backyard with a picnic table.
Yeah.
So worked on cleaning things up, weeding, leaves, and all of that. And then we planted a garden.
Oh, that's amazing. All right. So going back to the composting for a second, this is a sentence I've never said before, but it's true, is I'm a big fan of composting. I actually drive my wife nuts because I will take things out of the trash and put them in the compost.
Okay.
And, we're still getting in the habit of doing it. But big fan of that. I think that's great. So the garden, does the whole team work on it, or is it just individuals specifically who that's their thing? How does that get done I don't think I've heard of an organization other than ones that are involved in food that have a garden on their property. So how actually is that getting done?
Sure. So I think this is at least year 3, at least that I am aware of. I helped last year and this year. But we have a little garden bed, and then the team shares the responsibility of watering the garden. So with all of our consultants being on projects and traveling, we take turns on that, especially the last couple of weeks. It's like 100 degrees.
This may come out a couple weeks from now, but right now it is literally 100 degrees and gardens need watering right now. Yeah.
Yes, I haven't checked on it this week, so.
All right. Okay. Well,
we'll see.
Well, that's cool. Well, that's awesome. So I want to pivot to a few more quick hit questions, things we may have touched on, but I'm looking for sort of your best thinking on them. The first has to do with your career path. You've pivoted at least once, you could even say twice in your career, and you've obviously had some success early in your career. What have you learned along the way about building a fulfilling, successful career? What's your advice if you were talking to someone who is maybe still trying to figure out where they should go in terms of a career path, or if you were just sharing with someone what you've learned, what would that be?
I would say in my role as a sales professional to network. Mm-hmm. I mean, you are meeting people all the time, making a variety of connections. And once you make that connection, just follow up with them a few times over the course of a few months. You can usually feel out the situation and what communication preferences that they prefer, whether it's text, email, LinkedIn, meeting with them in person or lunch, and then just making sure that you're top of mind when they have a need.
Yeah, I think that's great for a couple different perspectives. First is, you're still pretty early in your career, at least compared to me, but most people are compared to me. But I like the fact that you're already focused and already see the value in that. I think that's something that some of us come to later in life, but it's kind of like investments. The sooner you do it, the more value you're going to get over to the course of your career. So I think for young people to really understand that relationships are how it gets done, if you're in sales for sure, but really whatever career path you pursue. So start building them early and start nurturing those relationships early. The other piece of it too is the communication piece. I think a lot of times in today's environment, we communicate whatever's most convenient, whatever's fastest, whatever is our habit, not really thinking about the other person's preference. But it's really important to give people what they need as a communicator so you can get what you need from them.
Yes. Yeah. I am a big supporter of using a variety of communication techniques. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely clients where I know that a phone call is what they prefer. Mm-hmm. So I pick up the phone and give them a call. And you just have to kind of work with what their interests are. Yeah,
and it's listening to them, because sometimes they'll tell you that directly, but it's also observing and understanding how do they communicate. Sometimes it's not evident immediately, but you just have to pay attention, and that's something that I need to improve, because I'm quick to fire off things without thinking about it too much. So thanks for the reminder, if nothing else. All right, let's talk a little bit about the work that you do, the organization you work for. And Amanda, this can be about your industry, it can be about 7Gen, it can be really about the whole HSE universe. What's a myth or misconception that you want to clear up, or something that's maybe not appreciated enough that you want to amplify? So it could be a myth or a misconception, and it also could be about sales, maybe something that people get wrong about sales. What would you say your answer to that one is?
I would say a misconception in a sales professional role is that people just want to make the sale. So with 7Gen, we have our proven process, and we just start with our discovery call, where we really talk with our clients and understand their needs and EHS initiatives that they have. Really want to understand what they need, and then work with them on a solution that is within their budget, and we help them prioritize their needs as well. So we really care about their employees and the health and safety of them and the environments that they serve.
Well, and I would guess you're willing to make that investment, number one, because it's the right thing to do, but also because you're not exactly selling widgets, and it requires maybe more lead time to get people to build trust and to actually engage with you. Is that correct in your experience?
Yes, and that's why the networking and relationships, going back to that, are very important, because you end up working with the same people, even if you switch careers.
Yeah, that's true, especially in Northeast Indiana. Well, and in the industry you're in, I would assume that trust is a very important factor, because sometimes an organization like 7Gen, not true only for 7Gen, but organizations who do the work that it does, sometimes you have to give bad news. You have to tell people things that maybe they don't want to hear. And if you don't have a relationship with a lot of trust, either they're not going to believe what you say, or it's going to be easier for them to reject that because they don't want to hear it. But it's important not just for them, but for the communities they serve, that you're able to overcome that and get them to understand that they need to take action that's going to serve them better in the long run. At least I would assume that's true.
Yes, there is news where clients have compliance gaps, with environmental or safety. So that relationship does help when we deliver that news or the report to our clients. But we're there to support them, so we can help support the next steps with the recommendations that we make to help them close the gaps.
Yeah, and if you don't, you're really not doing your job.
Yep.
So that's why you're there. All right. Well, one more for you, and this has to do with the way you work, because everyone's looking for ways to be more productive, to do more with less, or maybe just get home a little earlier and be done with work for the day. What is something or multiple things, if you want, that you use that help you get the job done? A tip, a tool, a trick, could be an app, could be completely analog, something you use that's important to you.
I would say I'm not a tech expert, but I have tried ChatGPT out recently.
Okay. All right. So tell me how you've used it and what your experience has been.
Yeah, so I actually used it for the AIHA Connect conference. I put in companies that we currently work with and had it generate a list of clients in similar industries.
Oh, that's amazing.
So just kind of using it for outreach then seeing what similar clients were going to be at the conference and connecting with them prior.
Wow. So did you get good results from that?
Yeah, and I have some really good connections on LinkedIn amazing. And follow-up meetings. So.
Wow, that's more than I thought you were going to say. That's a really pretty technical use of ChatGPT. Oh, that's cool.
Tried it out. There's definitely a lot of different uses out there for it. Used it to reword sentences to keep things more exciting and fresh.
Yeah, that I've done with, sort of mixed results, mainly positive, but I haven't done more of what you described, and I probably should have at this point, more of the research-based use cases, but it sounds like maybe that's something I should do.
Yes, yeah.
All right. Well, that's the whole reason I do this podcast, is to learn what other people are doing and get better at my job. So thanks for the advice.
Yes, you're welcome.
Well, Amanda, thank you so much for doing this. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I really appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you, Anthony. Thanks for having me on today.
Sure. And thanks to everyone who took the opportunity to listen to this episode of the Asher Marketing Podcast. We'll be back next time with another great guest, and we hope you'll join us then.